Hi, I'm Sharon White and I'm here today with Dr. Aaron Deer, and he's a gastrointestinal surgeon down in Melbourne. Hi, Aaron.
Hi, Sharon. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Now, today you're going to be talking about gut bugs and our genes and well-being. And I know that you're a very big health and well-being advocate, and you are very holistic in your treatments. So I would love you. I know that so many people looking at disease don't realize that we really need to look at our guts. I mean, Holistic Living magazine brought out a whole magazine on gut health. And I know that it's the foundation of health, and this is obviously what you believe because this is what you do with your clients. It can be very jargon orientated, and I think for people to really look at their health and understand it, it really needs to be broken down, and this is what you're going to do for us today. So if I can ask you to educate us about, gut bugs, what's good for us, what isn't, how can we really look after our health on a gut and a microbe level, that would be wonderful.
Right. Look, firstly, Sharon, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have been following your work, and I must say that, through the Global Healing Exchange, you're doing a fantastic job. And one of the key things, as you rightly pointed out, is that there is so much information that is available on the internet that it can be very confusing for a person who's got limited medical understanding and also the ability to tease these scientific articles and words, that it's hard to pull out what is of relevance and significance and what is not. So once again, thank you so much for the opportunity. Look, I'd be delighted to speak to your audience on this really hot topic, I should say, of gut microbiome, as it is called more technically speaking, which is really, the bugs that live in our gastrointestinal tract and call it home. See, our general understanding was that the gut bugs are any bug, the best bug that is there is the one which is dead, basically. That's how we were brought up in medical school, in our learning, that, try and kill any bug, use antibiotics, hand sanitizers outside, and every bug needs to be killed, basically. That viewpoint is slowly changing. What we are beginning to find out is that, yes, we may have used very strong antibiotics, we may have used all these hand sanitization techniques, but it is not really helping the overall incidence of disease prevalence in our society. Things like allergies, believe me, I never had heard of someone have an allergy to avocado, of all things. I was recently at a social meeting, and I found someone who had allergy to avocados. Now, yes, peanuts allergy is becoming a norm, but we are seeing that the general trend of allergies in our society is just increasing. The general trend of diabetes, obesity, cancers, and cardiovascular diseases is increasing. Now, mind you, none of these 4 or 5 problems that I have mentioned are associated with a bug. These are not infections. These are inflammations. And they are increasing in our society. And I think having the same view that all bugs are harmful is actually not true. And that this is what science is actually telling us, that our human body has got 10 trillion cells. And there are 100 trillion bugs that call our gastrointestinal tract home. Now, they outnumber us by 1:10. Now, these are just broad figures and broad numbers that I'm giving you, but the important thing is that they exert a far more powerful influence on our overall health and well-being than what we think we can. Now, mind you, I want to highlight here that this concept of, gut health isn't something new. It's not something that has been discovered in the last year or last 10 years. 350 BC, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, he said, and it is there in his quotes, that all disease begins in the gut. Now, he knew it at that point in time. So the thing is that we had forgotten it. There was a phase where it was not given that much importance or relevance. However, the interest has been reignited. Over the last 5 to 10 years, the research that is coming up based on the information and the influence that these gut bugs exert on our, not only our gastrointestinal related problems, but our risk of developing dementia. Well, who would have thought of that, that your gut bugs control your risk of developing dementia? And now they say even your mood. Mood is governed by one of the hormones called serotonin. The serotonin, the highest production of serotonin is in our gastrointestinal tract. So our GIT, or gastrointestinal tract, is not just something that helps us in digest food. It is the seat of our hormones that are produced, and it is the seat of our immune system. And the immune system is really our body's first line of defense against anything that we subject our bodies to from an external source. So with that sort of a background, I thought I'll let you ask me any pointy questions that your audience may be interested in.
Okay, so we're looking at, if we've got bugs in our system, we obviously don't need to kill them off like we've been told that we do. How do we make sure that we've got good bugs and not bad bugs? And what sort of things do we need to put into our system to make sure that they're thriving in there to help build our immune systems?
Okay, great. So essentially, the thing is that, the gut bugs need, and mind you, the background information over here is that only 30 to 40% of the bugs we are able to culture in our laboratories. There is still about 60 to 70% of the bugs that we don't know about. So it is almost 3 times the bugs that we still don't understand. So it's a sizable number of bugs that we still haven't studied. So we're talking on, based on the information we have on this 30%. The only one thing that these gut bugs need to thrive in our system is plant-based fiber. That's the only thing that these gut bugs need. Now, clearly, we can't just survive on plant-based fiber, but the important point to note over here is that human beings, the human gastrointestinal tract is 9 meters in length from the top end to the bottom edge. But 90% of our bacteria, or the bugs that we have, are in the lower third of the gastrointestinal tract, which is basically the large bowel. The stomach, the small bowel, and most of the upper small bowel, I should say, is considered to be sterile. Okay, so the reason why we need the plant fiber, and the plant fiber, which is specifically the plant fiber that doesn't get absorbed, is the one that reaches the large intestine. That is where it gets broken down, and that is really the food for these healthy gut bugs. Now, just to give you an example, individuals who consume a lot of sugar or starchy stuff, they have got a different profile of bacteria in their gut. They may have an overgrowth of yeast. Now, yeast loves starch and sugars. And the current theory is that when you have an overgrowth of yeast in your gastrointestinal tract, that in fact creates an environment in your gastrointestinal tract such that you have cravings for sugary things. And it's not just that you as an individual is having it, it is the yeast in the gastrointestinal tract that is craving the sugars. So in fact, whatever we eat, we first feed our gut microbiome and then we feed ourselves. Now that's a profound, I should say, statement, or when I learned about it, this was like, wow, this is phenomenal, because we, in order to digest our food properly, we need to have the right profile of the gut bacteria. And that bacteria then appropriately breaks down the foods and is then responsible for unlocking the nutrients that are there in these foods or plant-based fiber that we consume. So the long and short is, in answer to your question, how do we maintain a good microbiome? I think if you look at your diet, and I believe diet is the best probiotic. In the market, there are several probiotics that are being marketed as 8 strain, high colony count, high diversity, this, that. I believe that the best probiotic is your diet. Now, if you have a good variety and a balance of, whole foods, not processed foods, not foods that are full of preservatives, but if you have good variety of whole foods in your diet, you will realize that you've got more vitality, more energy. You lose weight as well. This is again something that I have seen on a regular basis in my clients, especially when I deal with patients who come to me for an operation. That's a part of what I do. But I have found that when I help and educate my clients on how their diet influences their overall outcome after a procedure, they are amazed. And our diet has a profound influence. I'm convinced about it because I've tried all these things on myself first before telling it to my clients. So that's the one key message, if I can mention to your audience, is that taking a whole food diet, the way nature gave it to us, not packaged, not sort of, canned, that's not what you take. That's the bottom line. And if we can imbibe that, that will itself will bring a huge change in our overall health.
Yeah, I think, I sort of understand that as well. 20 years ago, I used to do karate, and I was really fit and active. And I remember back then, before I had the education that I've got now surrounding this, I would live off of pasta and, a really carbohydrate-based diet. Because I thought that's what I need to do for training, and it'll keep me strong. And I remember I was really, quite overweight. I'm very intolerant to carbohydrates now. I hardly ever have them unless they're vegetables in my diet. And I found that when I was eating like that, I would crave more sugar and I had less energy. And these days, I eat a very moderate to high protein diet, very low carbohydrate diet, like a ketogenic type of diet. I'm not craving the sugars anymore. It's amazing. So it's as if my gut bugs inside are saying, look, you've got a really healthy gut bacteria. Feed me green food. Like I love celery. I just love celery, and obviously that's really fibrous. And it's as if my gut bugs are telling me what they want. Now I've got that equilibrium within my gut. Is that what you're saying? So if somebody eats lots of sugar and they've got really high naughty bugs within them, will the bugs be telling them what to eat?
Absolutely. And this is something that is coming up more and more in some of the scientific studies. But just on a side note, I might mention it. Your audience would be interested in hearing about this, that, and this incident has been quoted in several studies too. In Canada, there was a lady who was admitted in a Canadian hospital with an infection in the gut, which is called Clostridium difficile. C. diff is what it is commonly called. It was a C. diff infection that she had. And this C. diff is caused because of prolonged antibiotic use. So if an individual is in the hospital, or even if they are outside the hospital and they are taking lots of antibiotics over a period of time, the healthy gut bugs die off. And what takes over is the C. diff bug, which can create a lot of problems. In fact, it has also got a mortality risk of almost 12 to 15%. So what it manifests is with, diarrhea, bloody diarrhea, and bloating, and it can become very serious. So the treatment of this, as we are discovering, is not just giving more antibiotics to these patients, but they are good candidates for what we call as fecal transplant. I'm sure, fecal transplant is, again, catching a lot of attention, but fecal transplant is really a good modality to treat these patients who are hospitalized and have not responded to other non-sort of interventional modalities of treatment. So anyways, this lady lands up getting a fecal transplant from her daughter, who was obese. Okay, and this lady herself was not obese. She was fairly sort of lean built, and essentially what happened over the course, she got better from the C. diff infection, but over the course of next 3 to 6 months, she started gaining weight, which was unusual. She started gaining weight, and to a point where she herself came and became an obese person. This particular, I should say, event or instance has been quoted, and this was the starting point of investigating whether our gut microbes have actually got an influence in helping us determine what our ideal weight is. We call them as chubby bugs. These chubby bugs essentially break down our foods to such a point where we absorb every bit of it. Okay, and that is what leads to, we often hear there are some people who just eat a small amount of food, even if it is healthy, but they still can't shake the weight off, whereas others, they would eat anything, and the weight just doesn't seem to come on. And it has to obviously got to do with something beyond our food that we are putting in, and that's where this whole concept of the gut microbiome or the gut bugs is coming in. So this has been tested since in several mice models in the mice models in the laboratory, where the scientists took mice which have got which are called naked mice, as in these are like germ-free mice which have got no gut bacteria, and they fed the same food to both the control mice, which is the mice who have got normal healthy bacteria, and these mice with food which was high calorie food. And what they found was, when these germ-free mice were impregnated, or when they were given bugs from an obese individual, they actually landed up gaining far more weight despite the fact that they were on the same diet that the healthy mice were on. So that was the only variable. So that was really phenomenal.
Yeah, that's really, really amazing. So when we're looking at like getting healthy, what would be a tip that you can do other than diet, or the diet's the biggest thing that we need to do. So if somebody has really unhealthy gut microbes in their gut and they're trying to make that change, intellectually they know that they need to swap the sugar for the plant-based fibrous food, but how can they change what's going on in here? How can they make that change? What do you do with your clients? Because obviously your clients that come to you for an operation have a different mindset to somebody who has a really good healthy gut. So what would be the tip for you if somebody's watching this so that they can start making that change?
Great question, Sharon, and I think this will really benefit a lot of members of the community. See, one of the areas where I specifically sort of highlight the relevance of all this is really in weight loss surgery. That's something that I do. But what I've found is that over the course of years, and this has been reiterated in many, many studies that have been done, that weight regain rate after weight loss surgery is something to the tune of 30%, which means that 30% of patients would regain the weight unless there are, some strict checks and balances that have been put into place. So in the book that I'm mentioning about, I talk about this thing called as a triangle of change. A triangle of change is something that is very important to understand if we want to bring about lasting change. I always say that change is inevitable. However, personal growth or a positive change is a choice. So we are all going to change. We are all going to get old. We are all going to, in my case, lose more hair and things like that. But if we want a positive change, we have to make a conscious effort to go towards it. So there are three factors, there are three key points that I highlight to my clients whenever they come and see me. And this is what we call as an integrative approach. Integrative approach meaning we are combining. We're not saying that surgery's got no role. Surgery has got a role in individuals who specifically need it, but not everyone needs surgery, and that is acknowledged too. The point being that to get the maximum benefit from any intervention, whether it is surgery or taking medications or whatever it is, you need to understand that the individual himself or herself has got a lot of factors and a huge role to play in determining the eventual outcome. And the triangle of change has got 3 key points. And it starts with, and I always talk about this, look, I'm not a gene expert, but the fact is that any change that has to happen has to start from the cellular level, which means we are all a huge mass of cells. Like some cells are specialized to do a certain function, and they combine together and form an organ, like the liver or the heart or the brain. So the chain has to start from the cellular level. And the key thing in that is our genes. Now, a lot of people are born with this impression that, oh, our genes are made, the die is cast, we can't change it. That concept itself is being challenged now. The reason for that is that you'd be surprised to know that 90 to 95% of our genetic material is modifiable. They did a human genome project, and that only concluded a few years ago. And what they found was that the human beings have got, even though we consider ourselves hugely evolved, the most evolved being on the face of the planet, we have got a set of only 23,000 genes. Only 23,000, which is what brings about all the variation that we see, like the color of someone's eyes, the skin color, and things like that. Whereas the gut bugs that we have provide us, which are, by the way, as I told you, they are 10 times more than the number of cells that are there. They provide almost 1 million gene combinations. Now, whatever we are seeing of our cells is basically the result of, interaction of 2 sets of genes from mom and dad. And that's what led to, whatever we see every day in the mirror. Okay. So the point that I'm trying to make over here is that our genes don't act in isolation. Some of these genes can be expressed, they can be turned on. And also these genes can be turned off. So what influences these genes is 2 other factors. One of them is our microbiome, which is the gut bugs. And the second is the lifestyle factors or our environment. If someone is living in a very stressed out environment, and this, by the way, has been studied in animal models, in mice models, where what they did was they basically took female mice, subjected them to a constant level of stress by way of a very small electrical current. So they were consciously anxious, and every time they would get a current, they would get a specific odor. The odor was of, a fruity odor. So every time they would get this unique, they would spray this odor in their cage, and they would also give them an electric current, a very mild electric current. So that would be associated with the stress. So what happened eventually was that every time they would, after a few days of conditioning, every time they would release this odor in the cage and not give the electric current, the mice would display features of stress and anxiety. All right. So this is where it was any association which is, sort of given with any other stimulus would create the same response. Now, what they did was that these mice, these female mice, then became pregnant. So they were impregnated. Now, their kids, which is the next generation, the baby mice, when they were put separately into a cage and just given this odor again, no electric current, just the odor, displayed features of anxiety. So what this means is that this information is transmitted from one generation to the other. This level of stress, anxiety, is then stored in our genetic blueprint, which is then it is transgenerational transfer of that blueprint onto the next generation. Now, the only human study that has been done on this, on the same aspect of how genes transfer these qualities from parents to their offsprings, is on Holocaust survivors. Kids of Holocaust survivors have got high levels of anxiety and mental health issues. And they have found that it is related to this genetic transfer of information. So what I'm trying to get at over here is that our genes exert a tremendous amount of influence. The genetic material that we have can be modified. It's only in 5% of circumstances or genetic problems that we cannot modify it. That the die is cast, we've got a particular problem, and that is what it is. But even then, I believe very strongly, and again, I don't have the evidence to back it up right now, but who knows, you know, we will maybe have it in 10, 15, 20 years or so. But the key point over here is that our environment and our gut microbiome have the influence on our own genetic material that determines how we express or how much a gene is turned on, and how much a gene is turned off. So what our aim of all these interventions, healthy lifestyle, good diet, wholesome diet, with a bit of stress management techniques in it, is to turn on the good genes that help us enjoy a better quality of life and turn off the genes that actually create problems such as cancers, allergies, and the rest.
Wow, that study excites me so much. You know, when I'm working with my clients and I'm working with the subconscious mind, sometimes, you know, we get emotions that were brought on by our parents or our grandparents, and it's the same thing that's happening physically in our body as well. So it works on a spiritual, mental level, but it also works on a physical level. And it's, we know we're so interconnected, so it makes a lot of sense that that happens. But what I'm loving about what you're saying is, no matter where anyone is now, they can switch that switch within them to make change with them. So there is hope for everybody to get healthy again, which is, in a very simple level, what you're saying, isn't it? Before I let you go.
Absolutely, Sharon. And look, I always say that, you know, the true health is a true wealth, I should say, is your health. If you are healthy, you can do anything. You've got so much opportunity. You see opportunity everywhere. The one thing that I notice, and I'm sure your audience would agree with this, that it only takes us one day to be sick when we lose all our enthusiasm, all our drive, all our energy, all the creative ideas that come to us. It only takes one day of sickness to take everything away from us, you know, all of that. So when I talk to my clients, and when I'm talking in a public sort of platform, I generally ask this question, that how many people over here want to double their income? And I generally see that all their hands, you know, most of the hands would go up, understandably. And then I say, how many of you believe that you are paid by the hour? And, you know, some people would raise their hand, some people would not raise their hand, and some are undecided. Now, what I say is that we commonly think that we are paid by the hour, but that is not true. We are paid by the value that we bring to the hour. Now, where are you going to bring that value from if you don't have that creativity, you know, that enthusiasm within you? Where are you going to get, if you're not healthy, if your brain is not healthy, you know, that's even more important. You would be sulking in an environment of self-doubt most of the time, because that's what happens. Low self-esteem, poor confidence. And they are so important things. And as I said to you, that all of these principles I applied on myself before I spoke about it, and I speak about it with a lot of passion to my clients. So I want to thank you, Sharon. I know we are sort of hard pressed for time, but look, I love the opportunity to share this information with your audience. And I once again want to congratulate you for the fantastic work you're doing through your website and the Global Healing Exchange magazine.
Thank you so much. I just, before you go, I'd love you to tell people quickly, what's the title of your book that's coming out this year? When's it coming out? And your website, where will people find you if they want to learn more?
Sure. So my website is www.melbournegastrosurgery.com.au. So Melbourne Gastrosurgery. I also have another website which deals with, excuse me, which deals with, you know, all these non-surgical aspects, I should say, you know, of healing, of, you know, self-improvement and self-development, and that is successwithharmony.com.au. So successwithharmony.com.au, and that's where we, you know, post a lot of our videos of public seminars and other things. I'm fortunate to have a team of other medical specialists with whom we work together. And in terms of, you know, your other question, sorry, Sharon, was about the book. Yes. So the book is called The Gut Factor, and the work is nearing completion, and we hope that the book will be released anytime in the second half of this year. And the book is really about highlighting the importance of the gut as an organ, and the gut bugs that live within us, and how much influence they have on our overall health and well-being. I have given a tone of a surgical sort of, you know, I should say, flavor to it, because this is something that I see on a regular basis in my practice. And I've also summarized some key points at the end of every chapter, some action steps that individuals can take today. It does not contain any recipes. I'm not promoting any specific supplements with this, because that's not the intention. The intention is to educate the masses so that they can take charge of their own health, because the way and the rate at which disease is increasing in our society, our modern medicine is limited in what we can offer. And that is where an individual needs to take charge of their own health, because they can make a huge difference in the outcome by understanding these concepts.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. I thank you for coming in, and this is going to be the first video in a series, so I'm looking forward to our next chats.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sharon, and best wishes to your audience.